The online dialogue series of Refugee Poets was commissioned by the Special Initiative on Displacement SIF program of the Civil Peace Service of GIZ. We appreciate the discussions and insights shared. The opinions expressed in these dialogue series are those of the speakers. They do not necessarily reflect the opinions or views of GIZ. Hello and welcome to Try My Shoe. I would like to begin today's episode reading of Try My Shoe, the book. So I am going to read an excerpt from Masisi's story. So Masisi talks about his experience being a refugee a Congolese refugee in Rwanda. So I'm just going to read a snippet of it. We did not have any education, but as time went on, UNHCR provided some schools, which were not so good, but our parents forced us to join schools, and we are glad that we had that chance, so we thank God. So as time went on, those who focused on their education got a chance to join national schools, and that is why today I am someone else, because I joined and got an education. So this is the story of Masisi, and his story is not isolated. So today we are speaking about education in times of crisis. We are speaking about education in times of forced migration. What happens to people's education when you're forced to flee your country? What happens then? What do you do? So we are going to get into this today with amazing panelists, and one of them has been here before, but that's a story for another day. And so why am I excited about today? Why am I looking forward to this? Is because you and I are both on a journey to learn and unlearn. And today we tackle education, which is pretty much a principle that we are both applying. You, my listener stroke person who's watching, and me, your host, Joyce Nyinyuzi. I am thankful to GIZ, CPS Special Initiative for Education, and the Anika Initiative for providing this opportunity for us to be able to reach you. And without further ado, I would like to welcome my panelists today. And I will start with the gentleman. Please, niambie, what's your name? Karibu sana.
Yeah, my name is King Moses. Ndo jina ambayo najulikana kama mwimbaji. Lakini jina langu naitwa Msafiri Jeme Babala. I'm from Congo, DRC, but now in Kenya niko Kakuma refugee camp. Yep.
Nikute nani? Nikute Moses ama nikute Msafiri?
Forever. Lakini Moses, yeah.
Nikute Moses
ni rahisi sana. Yeah.
Karibu sana Moses.
Asante.
Yes. Lady, tell me your name. Okay, one of the two ladies. Tell me your name. Well, lady after Moses.
Okay. Thank you first for having me. My name is Komora Cecilia. I'm the co-founder, Education in Emergencies Practitioners. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia, for being here. I would just like to say, it's not that I don't know your name. I just like to save up, to build up the expectation.
Sure.
Lady who's been here before.
Thank you very much, Joy. It's a pleasure to be here once again. My name is Foni Joyce Vuni, a South Sudanese refugee living in Kenya, but also part of the Tertiary Refugee Student Network, a global group that works on education advocacy, and also part of a Refugee Education Council that is currently working on education as well. So it's a pleasure to be here again.
I am glad to host you again. I am very excited to have the three of you today. Because okay, and I'm going to keep switching because today I am in the mood for switching between English and Kiswahili. So anyway, I am very excited about what we're going to explore. Number one, kwa sababu it is in your field, Foni, it is in your field, Cecilia, and one says education affects you directly. So tell me your story. You said wewe ni refugee from Congo. So please tell me your story, a bit of it, and then so we can build on that.
Yeah, mimi ni refugee ambaye napatikana ni Kakuma refugee camp na nimeingia 2011 kwa mwezi wa 3 hapo. So baada ya kufika kambi ilikuwa kidogo na challenge kulingana na mazingira mtu ulikuwa kiishi na the environment where umejipata tena kwa muda ambao tuliingia. Kwa hiyo the challenge was like food or whatever chakula ades, it was a trick. Ilikuwa ngumu kwangu mimi kibinafsi kwa sizoea kula hivyo, lakini nilizoea kulingana time. And then from that we were given the shelter from the community. So like me nilipelekwa the place where panitoka Kakuma 2. And then but before babangu alikuwa ametangulia in the camp because like kwa country I came from, my father alipotea for more than 2 years or 3 years. So tulikuwa tuna mama. Then after kuingia kambi Kakuma refugee camp is where nilipatana na babangu. So hakuna mtu alikuwa anajua where he is because aliunguaga sometimes, you know, like full body aliunguaga. But alitembea na watoto. So after kufika hapo tukapelekwa community and then tukadai watuunganisha as a family. So tukakuwa baba na mama zikaunganishwa hizo kadi and then we became one family as well. So after that tukaambiwa tunafaa kwenda shule. You know, like kwa sababu French ndio program zetu za Kifaransa. Yeah, it's a bit different with English. I mean English program and French program. So we were recommended to go back to school, like tuanze tena primary school and then endelea forward. And then nika-join class 5. But I remember kwa nchi yangu nilikuwa nimemaliza shule.
How old were you, Saizo? Ulikuwa umemaliza shule?
Yeah, I was like 19 years.
19, so you had to anzia class 5 at 19.
Yes, so nikaenda class 5 tena. Nika-join tena watoto ambao tuliacha some years back. So nikaanza masomo class 5, class 6, 7, nikaingia secondary form 1, form 2, and then I stopped. Yeah, because you know it was a bit tricky kuendelea na shule kulingana na mazingira watu wanaishi Kakuma. Kwa wengine wanaweza lakini not most of them kulingana na challenges za kimaisha, unaona? So nikaachana na shule. I was a musician too. Kakuma refugee camp. So nikakuwa pamoja na Film International as a company, tukafanya nao as a musician, coming to Nairobi, the time where we took a join Octopizo as a, you know, as a founder at that time. And I was like a youth ambassador in Kakuma refugee camp, whereby every competition I was including like kufanya hizo ma competition as a judge, stuff like that. Ni mambo mengi. So after I joined the school, nikaanza hiyo primary, nikafika mpaka form 2, nika stop. Okay, people ambao tulianza nao waliendelea na wakamaliza form 4. But the challenge was like on the ground ni ile okay, for you and HCR inajitahidi kutoa hiyo education as well. Hakuna kitu kinakosekana shule, lakini kibinafsi mimi ni kwa walimu labda. Unajua like mwalimu anaingia kwa darasa the time you feel like coming and anakupa too much work as a student, na ni kazi yake mwalimu kukuelewesha na kufundisha ipasavyo. So according to me, niliona unutoto because sisi niko kwa shule. Afu unajua pia the challenges like percentage kubwa unaambiwa unafaa uaso as a student, but ukiangalia kuna challenges pia za books, unaona? Because buying your own book inakuwa ni challenge because unahitajika kuwa na books tofauti, you understand?
Yeah.
So ilikuwa ni challenge kitu kama hiyo because shule inaweza ikatoa books maybe ya mathematics na unaweza kupea 2 books 2 hivi ama 3. but the rest unafaa ujitafutie.
Ujitafute mwenyewe.
Yes.
So now ume mentioned that you had to, 1, learn language mpya.
Yes.
Number 2, ni vigumu kupata materials za shule. Number 3, ukiwa 19 ukaingia class 5.
Yes.
Cecilia. How does this happen, and how does someone get forced? Okay, not really. Let me not say forced.
Yeah.
How does someone get thrown back so many classes behind, and why? Is there a system yenye inaweza facilitate someone when ako 19 to be able to, I don't know, catch up, or for us to adjust to that? Is there a system to eradicate this serious time lapse hapa katikati?
Yeah, there is. We all have ambitions, and we have friends and relatives that we love and will not want to be away from them. And in a refugee context, it's happened so drastically that they just move for their safety.
Yeah.
So in that event, they don't carry their travel whatever, the documents, the travel passports, academic passports, or even any academic certificate. So one thing for them is safety. So when they arrive in a host country, education is not standardized. Education in Kenya is different from education in South Sudan in terms of language, in terms of the curriculum, in terms of what they prioritize. So it means that countries do not recognize other countries' certifications. So in that event, they don't, for instance, in Moses' situation, they don't recognize that Moses has been up to Form 4. So they'll have to put you in a lower class or a lower grade. But ideally, according to the UN strategy of 2010 to 2016, we should employ what is called accelerated learning. So what could have happened in Moses' situation is negotiate and maybe put Moses in Form 3, so that he orients with the Kenyan curriculum in terms of the language and what is entailed in the curriculum. Then from there, he can proceed to the 4th form and subsequently move to a higher learning level. So 1, the host government should put emphasis on accelerated learning.
Okay.
So as we don't frustrate and demoralize older learners.
Yeah.
And again, remember, the goal is not only to survive, but also to thrive as a refugee. So if you give someone physical protection, but you don't empower this person economically, you don't protect this person cognitively, you don't protect this person psychosocially, then even survival protection will not yield much.
Yeah, I hear. You have mentioned the policy 2010 to
the 2020-2016 UN strategy on education.
UN strategy on education. So my question is, given that Kenya is a signatory to the 1951. Thank you. To the 1951 convention on I think refugees, does it mean then that the Kenyan government is obliged to follow the directive?
Absolutely.
It does, yeah?
Absolutely.
Sorry, Cecilia, expand on that a little bit, and then Phone, you can probably take over on it and expound some more.
There are various international instruments that guide refugee treatment and protection. And if a country is a signatory to that particular instrument, then they must follow what the instrument says to the latter.
Okay.
So for instance, we are the host of refugees at Kakuma or even Dadaab. Kenyan government is mandated to provide education so that these refugees also get to attain or achieve their basic. Remember, education is not just a basic human right. It is a very fundamental human rights that open doors to all other rights.
Yeah.
So Kenya, as a signatory to that policy or to that fundamental instrument, then they are mandated to provide quality. Mark the word quality education. Education that ensures that somebody is empowered, that ensures that somebody becomes a citizen who is responsible, and a citizen who is who can self-sustain himself or herself. Yes.
Yeah, and then when you're building up on that, kindly throw in the policy, the structure of the 2010-2016 policy, and then after that we will work backwards to where we are right now, what
Yeah.
policies are we employing?
I think one thing that we also need to realize when you're talking about education, especially in host countries where refugees are, is that we can't talk about education for refugees and leave the host community as well behind. If we look at the population we have in Kenya and the need for education, many young people want to go to school. And then we have refugees who've come into the country as well, who also need that support to get to schools. So as much as Kenya has signed that policy or the convention itself, it's really important that when we're thinking about education and access for all, the quality for host community youth or host community children also has to be taken into consideration. Because if we're working together to really create a good system, then we're building Kenya not only for the refugees, but then for also the host community children and youth. Just thinking back in 2017, we had the Djibouti Declaration, which was created, which we had IGAD ministers for education came together to really sit and look at within this region, what do we need to do?
So when you're saying this region, which region are we talking about?
Africa region, right? What do we need to do? This is the IGAD. We have the IGAD, right? So they were really looking at what do we need to do in terms of education for refugees, right? So they sat down and talked about, when we're talking about education for refugees, it has to be accessible. Refugees have the right to be admitted to schools. When we're talking about education for refugees, everyone has to be included, both boys and girls. So we had a couple of countries signing this particular declaration with the aim of, we want to implement this declaration because looking forward, it's something that will support access to education for refugees and for the host community children and youth. The second thing, it's going to promote self-reliance, because when we're talking about education, I know we also need to, when we're talking about education, si ati kuingia kwa class and kukaa chini peke. It's not about this. What about the informal sort of education? What about the TVET? Yeah. How can we ensure that people can still have access to all these particular places? It was looking at how do we tackle the problems of different systems as well. Because within the Africa region, I'm from South Sudan, and let's say I'm used to be taught in Arabic. I'm coming to Kenya and it's English. I will fail kabisa.
Absolutely.
And as she was saying, when I'm fleeing, the first thing that I will think about, I will not think about my certificate. You will think about, how can I get safe? How can I be safe, right? So really looking at all these challenges and finding a way to ensure that refugee children and the host community children can still have access to education. And then the other aspect is, of course, the language. We have different languages across Africa, but making sure that we bring all these people together is really important. So the Djibouti Declaration is focusing on how can we ensure that access to education is equitable, first of all, and then it's of quality. And then the third thing is something that will promote self-reliance. So it's still ongoing. The implementation of the Djibouti Declaration is still ongoing. I think there's some strides that have been made, but then looking at the Global Compact for Refugees as well, which is calling for a whole of society approach, rethinking how we should approach education, that's also something that is promoting. It is kind of like going to promote the Djibouti Declaration. It's not very fast. That's the first thing. That's one thing we have to realize with all these policies. It's not something that will wake up today and it's implemented. It has to take stages. Ideally, I would hope that by kesho nikiamka, I will not think about what about those 250 young children who cannot have access to secondary school. Because if you're talking about data as well, we have 77% of refugee. This is globally. 77% of refugees these are children who have access to primary level education. Then in the secondary section, we have about 31% who will then go to secondary school.
That is a huge drop from 77 to 31.
And then it drops further to 3% when it comes to tertiary level. And this is there's so much need, and then the funding is not so sufficient. The needs are so many that you end up thinking, which one do we prioritize? But then when you're thinking about education, it's very fundamental. If I'm reflecting back on my country, for instance, if I want to go back to my country, and use the skills I've learned. It can be informal education or formal education, because this will help me rebuild my country. So this is why within the refugee community, education becomes such a priority, because it's one of the things that can never be taken away from you. Mm-hmm. We don't have to go far. Moses fled his country.
Yeah.
He came with his education. He came with his passion. He came with his skills. And he's using it within this particular place. So it's one of those things that even if you don't have that document, it's still something you can take with you. The other thing that I've seen being implemented as well when it comes to education, we have the UNESCO educational passport. So this is something that is coming up, where it allows refugees to travel and have access to different sort of education. The other thing when it comes to changing how access to education is approached, we have something called complementary pathways.
Okay.
So remember when I was previously here, I talked about different durable solutions. And one of them I said was resettlement. So within resettlement, we break it down to complementary pathways. So this is how can we ensure that refugees can also can be resettled, but at the same time have access to education.
I would like us to hold right there, because I want to get into that, what you have just called complementary pathways. The learning is real here. Anyway, I want us to get into that. But first, you have mentioned 77% of refugees worldwide will join school, primary level, and then high school stroke secondary, this number becomes 31%.
Yeah.
That is a huge slash. And then there's the 3%. Mm-hmm. Now, Moses, please contextualize this for us. Yeah. So for you, when you came to school and then joined class 5, watu wangapi walimaliza shule primary na watu wangapi wakaingia high school, na kama unajua watu wangapi pia wakaingia university, just a rough figure. Kisha mlikuwa wangapi kwa class moja mkiwa class 5?
Okay, nafikiri like the majority of us tulimaliza primary school.
Okay.
Na tukajoin together like secondary school. And then from there, from secondary school, so most of them waliacha shule na wakaendelea na mambo mengine. For university level, kwa wale ambao unajua sasa hivi waliendelea mpaka form 4 na wakamaliza, kuweza kujoin university maybe kwa point ambazo walizipata za mtihani. Unajua kuna ile scholarship. So inategemea na pointi gapi ulitoka nazo kwenye mtihani, ndio inaweza kukupa scholarship. Maybe like some of them in Canada, they were given that scholarship. Walienda Canada, like some Sudanese I know, and one of a Congolese lady, she went there in Canada also. Alipewa scholarship. Na kwa wale ambao labda wakupata opportunity ya kupata point ambayo inahitajika kwa kupata scholarship, wako Kakuma refugee camp.
Okay.
Na wamejishughulisha tu na maisha ya kawaida. So from Kakuma refugee camp, form 4 haikusaidii.
Okay.
Utaisoma, umemaliza, then it's over. Utaendelea na mambo mengine kama una uwezo wa kuendelea na university. So not all of us tulimaliza. Some of us tuli give up, na some of us also they go through na wakamaliza shule. Yeah.
So now wale ambao walifanya mtihani alafu hawajaenda university, wanafanya nini saizi? I mean, some of your friends for example.
I talked to one of them, aliniambia sasa hivi anauza mtumba tu, ananunua
pale Kakuma bado.
Yeah, anauza hizo nguo, anamsaidia pia baba yake kuuza nguo, na pia wengine alioa. So
important.
Yeah, wengine alioa. So like wanafanya shughuli zinazofanyika kila siku kujipatia something Kakuma refugee camp.
Kuna difference kubwa kati ya yule ambaye amemaliza shule na yule ambaye bado hajamaliza?
No, there's no difference.
Hakuna tofauti kubwa.
Like in Kakuma refugee camp, we are all equal.
Yeah.
As long as tunapatana ration kuchukua chakula, yeah, we are all
tuko sawa.
Hakuna sijui you are from where or from who. Certain refugees under one umbrella. UNHCR.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Asante, thank you for unanipatia reality checks every single time. So thank you. Cecilia, now, what intervention can be done? Ndio hii namba iache kukua. I mean, I know in your organization you're doing something phenomenal. Talk to us about that kidogo, and then also what interventions can be done so that these numbers stop being so drastic. Talking about 77%, it's just a figure, but then we have Moses is right here, and I keep saying in this podcast, we keep meeting people who we can say, I know someone who is a refugee. I listened to a podcast and I know someone who's a refugee. So we have actual faces. These are not numbers. How do we decrease these numbers? How do we
improve retention?
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, sure, it is.
Yeah.
One thing that we must be cognizant of is that majority of refugees are in developing countries.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. We have around 84.2 million refugees worldwide, but 86% of that number are in developing countries.
Hold. 86%
yes.
of 82?
Of 82.4 million refugees.
I am no mathematician, but that's huge.
Yes. So what does that mean? It means that these developing countries have structures that are overstretched, even before influx of refugees. In terms of education, they are struggling to provide quality education for even their citizens. They are struggling to provide basic services like health to their own citizens.
Yeah.
So having an additional burden of helping refugees is a huge thing.
Like it's an additional number of people.
Additional burden to them. So actually, in terms of helping to retain learners in school, the whole world, not only a single host government, not only a single non-governmental organization, should come together. It calls for teamwork.
Yeah.
Because UNHCR is the umbrella organization for refugees, but it is only one.
Yeah.
And the needs are so many, and the needs are competing. So, for example, when they first arrive in our camps, what is the first priority? Maybe food.
Yeah, food and shelter.
Maybe health. Are they sick? Yeah. Education comes almost last in their list.
Yeah.
So one intervention that should be done is that all countries should unite and help to alleviate refugee burden.
Okay.
That way, we will ensure that refugees get quality education through enough funding.
Okay.
Apart from that, we should work on our educational system. We should be at least flexible. Joyce was talking about coming from South Sudan and being taught in Arabic. And here you are coming to Kenya. The learning language is English.
Those are worlds apart. I mean, Moses studied French.
Yes. So he has to come to Kenya, start learning English first so that now you can understand what is being said by your teacher. Now you can understand what is written in the books. So I think we should have a system that is flexible, or even have these curriculums translated in refugee language. We have diverse languages. For instance, when you go to Dadaab, when you go to Kakuma, we have South Sudanese, we have Congolese, we have Somalis. Yeah, so we have to look for a way of translating this curriculum that we have, and also adjust this curriculum. For instance, you want to teach about history. History is all about my country, but this person is from another country. So that also brings another attitude, negative attitude towards learning. So we must adjust the curriculum, we must adjust the language, and above all, we should also work on training our teachers. Teacher training in Kenya does not concentrate on even the simple special educational needs that we know of, like attention deficit disorder, like autism. We don't even offer that. So imagine a teacher who is charged with the responsibility of instructing a class of refugees.
With people who do not understand.
So this teacher, first of all, does not understand where these refugees are coming from. And so in that scenario, he or she does not even know how to handle them, what to tell them. So we must also concentrate on teacher training programs in our countries.
Question. Are there teacher training programs for refugees? I mean, I am in my head, I'm assuming since there are two camps,
yes,
by now, someone should have probably figured a way of training, I mean, like maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 teachers. Or are there training programs for teachers within the camps?
Yes.
And how many schools are in the camps? There are 2 camps. What is the distribution of the schools?
What I know is that there are several organizations that have partnered with those who love to volunteer. And let me just pause a while and take this direction. When we even have professionals in our camps, but the issue is their certifications are not recognized within the host country. So we may have Sudanese teachers who are proficient, who are qualified, who can teach Sudanese students in the language that they best understand, but the regulations of the host country cannot allow. So most of the time, these teachers are employed as volunteer teachers. Volunteer teachers, and on that basis, the remuneration is also very, very low and ends up discouraging these teachers. So we have organizations that offer training, which is it's let's say an escalated training program. It may take 2 or 3 weeks on how to just give you tips on how to work with refugees as a teacher.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for that. So I had asked the question about how many schools are actually there and the number of teachers. But I mean, you can answer that, or Funi can answer that. One of you can answer that, since both of you are very well placed.
Well, I don't know the actual statistics because when it comes to access to education in the camps, I'm based in Nairobi. I live in Nairobi, but I don't know the actual data. But I can make reference to some of the services that are there. We do have some universities which are online, which makes it easier for refugee students to have access to that. There's some organizations that come together to kind of like ensure that refugee students are able to access online education. So that also ensures that they still have that enrollment happening. Within primary as well, there are a couple of primary schools there. Not sure of the exact numbers, but it's still struggling. Yeah, because we're talking about, as much as we will increase the number of schools, or we will make sure that some of these systems within the host community is even efficient, we also have to be very mindful of the other challenges they face. So we're talking about girls, for example. In this period of COVID, very many girls ended up pregnant. They can't go back to school. They're not able to go back to school because, they had to engage in transactional sex. This means engaging in sex with someone so I can get food for the family. You end up getting pregnant. They were taken advantage of. So that means these girls definitely will not go back to school. Yeah. I would assume, out of my mind, about 50% of them will not go back to school. Yeah. We have cultural norms. Where beliefs such as, if you're a girl, you can only go beyond this particular level. You're not supposed to go to like uni and secondary. No, why are you going there? Get married. So this is something that exists not only in the host community, but also in the refugee community. We have challenges such as young boys being, there's so many challenges that face the girls and the boys. So it makes it hard for me to even think, I'm 20 years old, how can I go to Form 1?
Yes.
It doesn't make sense, It really doesn't, yeah. I've gone to the Kenyan system all through primary, secondary, university. I've lived here all my life. Yeah. So I enjoyed school. I enjoyed that I was based in Nairobi. I had access to primary. I had access to secondary. I had access to the tertiary level. But when I'm thinking back to just the disappointment I would see in some faces of young people, it breaks my heart. Because I've gone through that system, and right now I'm kind of like just fighting. We need more of these spaces. To add on to what you were saying around teacher training, or just making sure these teachers also understand the context of refugees. One organization that I volunteered at and I really enjoyed working with them was Xavier Project. So Xavier Project also does scholarships for refugee students in secondary, and they pay some levies for primary. Okay. And as we were volunteering, people would apply for the scholarships. And that time, for example, you're looking for 25, just 25, and you have 250 plus students applying for those positions. You see, the need is so big, but they're trying to manage that. I applaud them because they're based here in Nairobi as well as in the camp. The other thing that they do, they used to go to schools. Yeah, so the different primary schools, and they would go to these schools and talk with the board of management. I don't know the educational terms, and they would talk to these teachers and explain to them, if you're sitting in a class and student A from this particular tribe does something like this, it's not because they're offending you or they're just bored with you. It's because in their context, that is how they react, because if I go to school and I find that the teacher is mistreating me because I'm just being myself, I'm just a kid. This is how I've learned. This is what I've learned for the longest time. So they need to understand that I'm acting this way because this is my culture, but then I will also adapt. So you meet me halfway. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's not about coming into the Kenyan schools and then telling the students, well, you're here, you have to drop everything that you know about your place. No, it's just meeting them halfway and understanding. Yeah. The other conversation I had with one of my good friends, Mogera, from the council, the Refugee Education Council, she mentioned that it's also really important when we're thinking about children or students with disability. Mm-hmm. How do we practically engage them? Mm-hmm. It's not only about giving them the brailles or giving them this. It's also looking at within this system or within this class, I have 3 students who have a disability. If I'm giving them an exam, I will give them an extra time wamalize. Si ati nitawakimbisha, time imeisha, those little things, it might not amount to the big policy, because if we just keep on waiting for policies from the global level to be implemented and we're not working at the ground, then it'll take forever. It'll take such a long time. The other good example I can share is a good friend of mine called Douglas. He's a Kenyan. And during COVID, KCPE was supposed to be happening. Yeah. KCPE was supposed to be happening. We had all these refugee students at home with no books, no connectivity. So they couldn't even engage in education. Yeah. Because kama you're having online classes, how am I supposed to have kama hata sina internet, hata sina data, even sina simu zenye ni smartphone. So Douglas went ahead. He runs an organization called Oasis Madare. And they created this phone application whereby you key it in and it doesn't need to be a smartphone. You just put in the number, unaingia, inakupeleka kwa like different. If you want information on COVID, that's still educating people, right? Yes. If you want past papers, you still get that. So I think it's really about looking at how can we come together to work for Africans. I would look at, I know you've said burden sharing. Sometimes I'm very against that word because I feel this is our country. This is our continent. We can't say just because you're not from Kenya or just because you're not from South Sudan, you're a burden.
Then you become a burden.
Yeah. I would look at it as this is our continent. How can we work together to make sure that our continent is better, is stronger? Because if then we look at it that way, then it's never going to be an issue of, wewe si wa hapa hivi. So kwa nini nikupatie chakula? Wewe si wa hapa hivi. Kwa nini nikupatie hivi? Because I think that's one thing for me personally. I feel it's one thing, as much as it's very political, very hard to think about, very all that, I tend to look at everyone as African. And if you have something to offer and I have something to offer, why not come together? We offer it in the best way possible. Yeah. So it's really about looking at all these different aspects of making sure that even within our immediate circles, are we even educated? Because I think when we're talking about education, we'll talk about schools and classes. But are we educated about our rights? Are we educated about what's happening in our country? Are we participating in that particular process of building our country? So I think for me, education is not just a matter of going to class and sitting there. It's a matter of being aware of everything around me and seeing where do I fit within that particular process. I know I've had access, which was very beneficial. I am happy that I had those little strides that have been that people put in place for me to succeed. But how do we make sure that it's not just Phony who is there, it's not just Moses who is there, but we have many Phonies behind me. We have many Moseses who can also become self-reliant, number one. They can become better people in the community. They can do things for themselves, and no one would ever consider them as wewe ni mzigo. Because I think, that's something that needs to happen. And it's a call that many young people, many refugees are saying, we need education. We will have food, we will have shelter. But the third thing is always education. Because this is one thing that gets us out of hizi mashida zote. Yeah.
I remember on one of the episodes, one of the guests said, the reason why I stayed in school was not because it was an interesting experience or because I enjoyed even learning, but it was because I was told if I stay in school, these opportunities are available to me. And he's actually, he's a poet. I think he was on our first episode. He's a poet and he's in, can't remember which university, but he's in a school in Nairobi. But he said he stayed, not because he wanted to, but because he enjoyed it. But yeah, because of the opportunities available. And in the same note, I want us to explore the opportunities that are here and available that the host community has actually made available. Yes, made available to everyone, like opened up a system. I mean, you have mentioned your friend Douglas doing amazing work. Cecilia, you guys are doing something quite brilliant, and I would want you to share like the specifics, please.
Sure. I work in an organization known as Education in Emergencies Practitioners. One of our beliefs is that education is an equalizer. When you are educated, the world will not want to know where you come from.
True.
They want to know what skills you have and what you have to offer on the table. And that way you are given a chance to demonstrate what you have and subsequently be able to sustain yourself. So we believe that we must endeavor to to enable refugees to access education, not just education, because education can have two impacts, either negative or positive, depending on the experiences and the challenges and the comfort that you have while going through the process. So for we as education emergencies, one of the things that we are really putting emphasis on is providing a comfortable environment so that these children can be engaged, they can participate, they can feel part and parcel of the process and eventually perform well. Because if the environment is not right, then we undo all the goods of education. So one, we focus on learning resources distribution or access. We always have drives that focus on getting learning resources, starting with pens. You might assume that anyone can afford a pen, but it is not true in some cases. So we look at such things: pens, books, exercise books, not necessarily textbooks. We start from that level as we rise up. So we provide this for refugees whenever we can. We have also had a program, especially during COVID times, where we could look for volunteer friends who are proficient in some content areas, develop content specifically for refugees, and send them to Kakuma, specifically Kakuma camp. Because we partnered with one of the refugees who's Nial. I don't know that you know about Nial then. Yeah, so through Nial, we could avail these resources to refugees at Kakuma. And apart from that, you're also very candid about refugee girls' education. We believe that refugees face a myriad of challenges, but there are those challenges that are very, very unique to girls, especially in a crisis context. So we have done something, and this is about ensuring that girls stay in school throughout, whether they have their menses or not. So we've always had sanitary wear drives where we post these drives on our social networks or platforms. And through our friends, we get to reach a majority, scores and scores of people. And through their donations in kind and in cash, we are able to reach these girls. Yeah. So basically, that's what we do. But we are looking forward to partnering with organizations that can help us provide access to tertiary learning. Okay. We have met refugee students in secondary school who are in schools but are very, very worried about their future. Because most of them are there so that they better their tomorrow's lives, and so that even when a durable solution presents itself, then they are ready, then they know how they are going to move forward in terms of how to take care of themselves and eventually their families. So that is one area that we are looking towards, and looking forward to partnering with different organizations that can help avail access, help avail funds, help even with mentorship, so that we get to retain more and more refugee learners in the educational system.
Yeah. Maybe just to add 2 practical examples of girls that I know who are doing such amazing work. One lady is Adhiu. Yeah, she's also part of the Tertiary Refugee Student Network. So Adhiu is based in Dadaab. Okay. But she's a student. She's currently a student here in Nairobi. And what she does is that she uses her funds to kind of like set up, she buys data for the girls within the camp. Girls who've gotten pregnant and they're thinking, I can't go back to school. So she holds calls with them weekly, kind of like just to check in and talk about, why is it important to go back to school? How can we support you? I can't financially support you, but I can give you advice and all that. So she set up this group of making sure that teenage girls who got pregnant are still able to go to school. And what at the end of it, when we were having this conversation, you know what she asked? She just asked, if we can really find mentors, this would really be important, because these girls can talk to other girls who would potentially help me. So if we have, this is kind of like just a suggestion I'm giving to the viewers. If you're interested in supporting young girls who've been through that particular experience to going back to class, link up with Adhiu. That's a practical way of giving back.
How do I link up with Adhiu? So I'm a listener, I'm a viewer. How do I, tell me?
I definitely Facebook and her phone number, because she's looking for girls who can mentor these girls. That's the first thing. The other example I want to share with, building on what you were saying, when it comes to the layers of vulnerability. I know there are boys as well. Boys also face quite a lot of challenges. They face quite a lot of challenges, and I will not exclude them. They also attention needs to be given to them. I'm just going to give this example of a friend of mine. She's called Farida. So Farida is not within this context, but she's a really good person I work with. So Farida got married as a child. Okay. That's one layer of vulnerability. You're a child, now you've gotten married, and then you have another child. So that's another layer of vulnerability. Farida then ended up being displaced. No, her husband first died, so she's a widow, another layer of vulnerability. Then she was displaced, another layer of vulnerability. You come into another country and there's no one to protect you, another layer of vulnerability. So when we're talking about education, when you look at the different layers of vulnerability, sometimes it becomes so hard for someone to say, I want to go and learn, if you have all these little layers of vulnerability. But Farida, very strong lady, decided, you know what, these vulnerabilities don't define me. And that's where resilience of refugees come in. You have so many layers of vulnerability. You don't have documentation. You don't have this. You don't have this. But you're still able to pick up and continue. So Farida decides, well, what did I come here with? I have my brother. He's a music producer. We have skills. What can we do? Look around. What resources do we have? We have this small house we've been given. We can create a solar-powered studio. They ended up creating a solar-powered studio. And within this studio, what do? They're recording music, creating awareness of COVID-19, creating awareness of different other social issues in the community. So that in itself, Farida is contributing to education, you see? Yes. So I think it's really important to understand when we're talking about education, it's also looking at how do we work with some of these existing structures that support education?
Yeah.
Farida is not like the formal sort of education, but she's still contributing to that effort. She went a step further to create a center where women can come, men can come, make masks and dresses, So it's really looking at how do we support all these little structures that are contributing to education to bridge that gap. If we're talking about bridging that 3%, whatever percent, it means going back to the community and asking them, okay, what other sort of educational needs do you have? Because we don't need to be assuming everyone wants to go to a university, while in real sense, they have talents and skills they want to explore.
Yes. I actually wanted to go on that juncture on, so other than formal education, right? Because Moses is a musician. So Moses, talk to me about your journey from the camp, ukatoka camp as a musician. What has that been like? Because you have mentioned sitting under someone that is mentorship, So kindly walk me through that journey, because that is another different angle of it. It's not formal education, but it is an education.
Okay. Kwanza kabla niendelea labda nirudi kidogo.
Sawa.
Kulingana na jinsi ambavyo mmeongea wao. Kwa pointi ya walimu, sijui mliongelea kwamba wanahitaji whatever. Training and whatever. Pointi ambayo nilikuwa nimesahau kuongelea pia ni kuhusu walimu ambao vijana ambao wanamaliza form 4 kama refugee camp. Like few of them wanakuwa walimu hapo ndani ya kambi.
Okay.
Na kwa wale ambao wanakuwa kwa Kenya ambao wako ndani ya refugee camp wanaofundisha pia, most of them wanakuwa kwa ofisi, labda anakuwa ni headmaster ama hivyo. But sasa kulingana na hiyo walimu ambao wanamaliza shule wanafunzi wanaomaliza shule na wanapewa kazi ya kuwa walimu hapo ndani ya kambi, ndio nataka kuzungumzia zaidi kulingana na education wao wanaitoa kwa wanafunzi.
Okay.
Mimi nafikiri kwangu ilikuwa enough kwa sababu sioni experience ama challenge kwa mwalimu kwa elimu anaitoa kwa elimu anaitoa kwa wanafunzi.
Okay.
Kwa sababu most of us maybe tulikuwa tunatry kumuuliza mwalimu swali na anashindwa kujibu nini mwalimu. So nakuta hiyo education aliyoipata mwaka jana ndio pia ananiletea mimi, so hakuna experience isipokuwa the same cycle.
Okay.
And second, kibinafsi mimi siamini sana, tunaamini elimu inatupea maisha kulingana na sisi psychological tunajua kwamba elimu, nafikiri kwa kama refugee camp kuna limit kwanza watu wanafaa walale saa 1 kwa manyumba, na pia mentally tumejiwekea kwamba kiubinadamu mtu anafaa kusoma.
Ngoja, hiyo saa 1 hii ni kabla ya COVID ama during COVID? All through?
Yeah.
Okay, sawa. Haya.
Lazima ukue saa 1 kwa nyumba. Bila hivyo utapigwa fimbo. Yes. And kibinafsi mimi elimu kulingana na Kakuma refugee camp, mwanafunzi ambaye anapatikana ni refugee camp, yeye kwake nafikiri nichukulia it's a part of time. Anafaa kwenda shule, that's a must. Kibinafsi, lakini sidhani kama ana ndoto za elimu kumsaidia kesho.
Okay.
Kwa sababu mfano ni kwa wale ambao wanaishi nao hapo waliomaliza shule, labda brother or sister, na anakuta hakuna utofauti wa yeye alikuwa akisoma akamaliza na yeye ambaye sasa hivi anasoma. So ni the same cycle. So iko mental tunafaa kwenda shule, na tukimaliza shule turudi tuendelee na mambo mengine. Kuhusu usanii, okay, kuhusu pia elimu hivyo mimi kibinafsi naamini kwenda shule inatusaidia tu kuwa waerevu, nijue kuandika, nijue kucommunicate na different people. It's a networking. Sababu mtu ninasoma naye leo anaweza kuwa tajiri kesho na nisaidia kwa sababu nilikuwa classmate wake kulingana na mimi. Lakini siamini kwamba elimu kulingana na ulimwengu sasa hivi tulionao, siamini kwamba elimu ni kipaumbele sana kwa mwanadamu. Eti labda elimu itakuja imsaidie, kwa sababu unajua wengi waliomaliza shule na wengi ambao sasa hivi wanakokota mkokoteni, inategemea na ndoto na focuses zako kama mwanafunzi unapokuwa ukisoma. Elimu inasaidia, yes, inategemea unaisoma kwa lengo gani na matumaini gani. Mimi elimu ilinisaidia kuandika, ikanisaidia communicate, kwa sababu nitaongea English, nitaongea French, nitaongea Kiswahili, hivyo. Lakini mambo mengine kulingana na sheria za kibinadamu sasa hivi lafani kujua ili nikupe kazi. Sio mpaka ndio na vyeti, kwa sababu hata kuna viongozi wa Kiafrika wanaongoza nchi na hawana elimu. Kwa ni mambo ya kawaida. Elimu ni kitu tunajifunza tu wakati wote. Mimi nilijifunza beauty professional, lakini hizi beauty mambo na wasichana, kutengeneza acrylics nzuri upendeze unipe pesa. Yes, na sikwenda Ashley's kusoma mawapi. Ni akili yangu nilifocus, nikaangalia, nilitaka kuwa professional, sikutaka kukaa nikwambie nails hapana. Nilijifunza professional na nilikuwa na hiyo bidii. Sikununuliwa na mtu kitu, but niliinvest the little I had, niliweka na nikapata everything I want, na nikajifunza. Sikwenda shule wala nini, na leo natengeneza vizuri, unapenda professional one. So naamini Kakuma refugee camp kuna shule kama Don Bosco. Don Bosco ni shule ambayo ni chuo cha mapadri cha Catholic, ambayo iko hapo inakuwa na different skill, vitu tofauti wanafundisha. Unaweza kujifunza kwa plumbery, electrician, unaweza kujifunza kuchora, everything ziko hapo. Mimi nilijoin hapo, nafikiri nilisomea nikikuwa hapo. Mimi nilienda hapo kujifunza tu English. Nilienda kusoma English, sikwenda kusoma kwa plumbery ama nini. So hizo pia ni vitu ambavyo wanafunzi wa refugee, nafikiri wengi ambao wanasoma Don Bosco imewasaidia kuishi hata Australia walipoenda ama America, na hapo ndani ya kambi, kwa sababu akienda host community uko Turkana, the other side of a bridge, atachoma vitu nitampa pesa
kweli.
Umeona? Lakini yule alienda form 1 form 2 akamaliza form 4, unampataga kwa bodaboda akibeba watu na imuingizie 50 ama 100. But yule alienda plumbery akikusetia maji kwa nyumba utampa pesa. You understand? So elimu kibinafsi mimi naitafsiri hivyo kwamba inanisaidia kuishi, kucommunicate, kuandika, usinibie pesa yangu kimahesabu. Like point ya music, music nilifanya kwa bidii pia. Ilikuwa challenge kidogo kulingana na kabila tulizonazo. Sio kila mtu anajua Kiswahili, na pia kulingana na mimi Kiswahili ninachokiongea labda kwenye music na everything na kwa ngumu kwa wale ambao hawajui Kiswahili. Because siongei broken Swahili, naongea Kiswahili. So so nikiandika inakuwa kama lyricist. So nikiandika naandika kweli kwa lugha ya Kiswahili. So ilikuwa ni ngumu sana kucommunicate na other fans, lakini tuliweza kulingana na nini? Music si lugha, si nini. It's a universal language. It's a universal language. So as long as you have a nice flow,
uko tu sawa.
A very amazing voice, then unaweza ukasikika na kukuelewa.
Moses, asante umetusaidia ku contextualize hii conversation yote. Umesaidia kutukumbusha number 1, everyone gets an education ndo uweze kuimplement, because otherwise if you're not using your education, what was the point, right? So thank you so much, Moses. I have enjoyed having you on set. Asante sana. Unanikumbusha kila mara nikisonga mbali unanikumbusha the point is this. Thank you. Before I move on, I would like, do you have any parting comments? Last remarks?
Kibinafsi sina mengi.
Tukupatia wapi kutengeza akili? Tupatie wapi muziki yako?
Mimi niko Marsabit Plaza hapo Ngong Road, ni ligi ndogo. Na kwa gapo tumeza 9 floor, nafanya maisha yangu na pia music. Like right now niko kwa competition ya Take Back the Mic. Hiyo ni competition kubwa inafanyika hata US, but now nafikiri kuja the other side of Africa. So niko hapo ndani pia. So nafanya yote, nafanya music, nafanya hizi mambo mengine yanatusaidia kulipa rent na kuendelea kuishi human being, but my passion is music na bado nafanya music kama kawaida. Ya leo naweza nikaongeza tu asante pia kwa kuwa One of you guys, kwa sababu nafikiri tumefanya na nyie rough poet, ilikuwa ni mafikiri mwaka jana before hata corona zianze. Ilikuwa huko tukifanya mambo na ilikuwa World Refugee, so ni represent hapo kama pia a poetry artist. So nashukuru pia kwa miongoni mwenu na kuchangia haya tulionayo kuhusu elimu na kadhalika.
Meshukuru sana kwa na wewe. Asante sana 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 sana. Meshukuru.
Nashukuru.
Cecilia. Now, give us your parting shot and also talk to us about how the host community can be accommodative to refugees and persons who have experienced displacement in a bid for education, whether formal or informal. Yes.
Wow.
I know. I am so sorry. It is these people giving me one now. It's their fault.
Yeah. So I'll just want us to understand what we mean when we talk about the host society. We are talking about two people here. We are talking about the government. And we are talking about the people.
Yeah.
You and me. So the host government has a mandate to ensure that they protect refugees who are in their soil. And as citizens of that particular country, then we have a mandate to adjust our attitude and just try to be in these guys' shoes.
Try my shoes. I just feel like doing this. Try my shoes.
Yeah, try my shoes. Imagine yourself. Imagine your goals. Imagine your vision. Imagine your family circle. Imagine your friend circle. You won't love to lose that.
Yeah.
But they have lost it. And they're in pursuit of safety and protection. Let's be understanding as a society and as a government. During that period when refugees are in our countries, let's help them not only to survive, but also to thrive. Because imagine if we do that, then they become economically empowered. Then who gets the taxes?
Yeah.
Whose countries prospers? Our country. And in the event that we do the opposite, we don't empower them.
Yeah.
We leave them to look for other survival tactics. Then crime rates shoot.
Yeah.
Then who loses? The same country. So for me, I will really call on the governments to help assist refugees to pursue their dreams and to thrive. Let me just say thrive, not survive.
Yes.
Thrive. And for us as the citizens, let's try to be accommodative. Yeah. Let's try to accept them in our country, give them any assistance that we can in our power to help them thrive. So the word today here is let's help refugees thrive.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for constantly reminding us, one, that refugees do not need humanitarian aid, they need developmental aid. Absolutely. So thank you for reinforcing that message over and over and for the amazing work you guys are doing at your organization. Thank you so much for creating time and being here. It has been an honor having you. Thank you so much.
Thank you too for having me.
Thank you. Why are you laughing? Why are you laughing?
I'm just so happy.
Now, complementary pathways. 2020. This is 2021. 2022. Camp closure is looming. We need to think about inclusion. So talk to me about what you mentioned, and then I cut you short. Complementary pathways and your parting shots. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to complementary pathways, we also have to be like what we said in the previous podcast. Yeah. The number of refugees getting resettled is still not a lot.
Yeah.
But people have been creative to start thinking about how can we also get refugees resettled, not only for education, but also to provide them that safety net that they're looking for. So one practical example that I'll share on something complementary pathway that has been happening is we have the World University Service Canada, WUSC scholarship. This scholarship allows refugees to be resettled from, let's say, example, Kakuma, and they go become citizens, permanent citizens in Canada. So they end up going there and becoming citizens, and they actually have access to education. That in a way increases tertiary refugee education. So it's really important that for other countries that, because I know within the developing countries, we're still struggling to provide for our own needs as well as the needs for refugees. So it's really it's needed to increase this sort of opportunities, so refugees can actually become resettled through other complementary pathways, and this means working with universities at the global level to increase that. My parting shot for today, I know, just building on what you said, Moses, education in different contexts means different things. But one thing that can never be disputed is the fact that whatever sort of interaction you have with education, it enables you to understand your potential. I can do this, unakuwa mjanja. The second thing, it enables you to exploit. With this skill, kama najua kutengeneza kikombe ni chore vizuri, what are some of the things that I can do? The third thing, it enables you to decide, okay, mimi nimeshajua my potential, I will make money for myself, but then I can decide to use it for myself or use it for my community as well. So as much as we will say, wale watu wako huko wanafaa kuja kutusaidia, it can never happen. It has to start from me. It has to start from me. I can't keep on thinking that my country itakuwa at peace, expecting that watu wengine wafanye na mimi si contribute. So nikirudi Juba, what am I contributing? Within Kenya here, what am I contributing? So as much as we are talking about self-reliance, it also goes back to the government and the policies that exist. How can we ensure that refugees become self-reliant? Practical, if they have skills and businesses, let's give them business licenses. If they can work, let's work and make sure that the Kenyan Act on Refugees can still accommodate them having work permits. Because they will still contribute to the economy. So it really goes back to making sure that within this whole system, we're not only talking about how they're just passing, but then are they contributing to our economies? Refugees do contribute to this economy. If we go to the statistics, they contribute quite a lot. But then that one will disappear somewhere. And it's really important to think about with this contribution, with the closure of the camps coming in. People, of course, want to go back home. We'll never dispute that. But then let's do it in a very dignified way. Dignified way where we're not just treating them as goods ama ni numbers tu tokeni hapa 77 endini. Exactly. Dignified way, talk with them, work with them to find lasting solutions. Do Africa tutoke kukua from a developing continent to something that is much more better. So those for me are my parting shots.
Thank you. It is always a pleasure. First of all, I keep saying I will tell you this. You have a very infectious laugh.
Wow.
So half the time when you're laughing, I'm like, please stop laughing because now I want to laugh.
I'll keep on laughing silently.
But thank you, Funi, for being here. Thank you for talking to us about the policies, about what is actually working now, and reminding us to be patient while these policies get implemented, and our role as both the host community and people who've been affected by displacement. What roles do we have to play? Thank you for guiding us. I mean, you always offer such immense.
Thank you.
I'm tempted to say wisdom.
Wow.
Insight. So thank you. Thank you
too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you too.
Thank you, Moses. I have enjoyed this immensely, and I am grateful for this opportunity that you guys have given me to be seated and learning from you directly. So thank you. And to you, thank you very much, my audience, for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for actively engaging with us on our social media handles and for listening to what our guests today spoke about. We have so much to think about. And I mean, for me, I have a lot to think about, and I bet you also as well do. And I am thinking that you probably would have many questions. and probably also answers and solutions on the way forward. So I'm inviting you to, again, join us on our social medias. 1, Refugee Poet, 2, Anika Initiative. Those are our 2 social media platforms. And thank you for being amazing and coming back over and over. Phony is laughing, that's why I'm laughing. Thank you for coming over and over and over. And I cannot wait to see you in the next episode. And thank you so much for being here and for listening. So take care of yourself and be safe. Bye.
Bye.
The online dialogue series of Refugee Poets was commissioned by the Special Initiative on Displacement SIF program of the Civil Peace Service of GIZ. We appreciate the discussions and insights shared. The opinions expressed in these dialogue series are those of the speakers. They do not necessarily reflect the opinions or views of GIZ.